Fundamental theorem of algebra is. We talked about it last class. Anyone think they can raise their hand and remind me what the fundamental theorem of algebra is? Tatum, there's notes over there if you need them from this unit. Last class, fundamental theorem of algebra. Anybody remember what the idea is? I can wait. I'm good at waiting. Fundamental theorem of algebra. What is that? Go back in your notes if you can't remember. You guys all told me last time was easy, so I know you're just being sleepy. Cheyenne.
Isn't it polynomial of nth degree has n complex solutions?
Totally. Can you tell me in English?
Yeah, so like the highest degree
Okay.
exponent is the same amount of equations that you have.
Perfect. So the fancy way would be a polynomial. Oh, wait for it. Thank you, Cheyenne. So polynomial of nth degree has n complex solutions. Right? That's the fancy math way. But like Cheyenne said in English, the biggest exponent is how many answers. There are. Remember that? We talked about that's one of the reasons why we needed our plus and minus when we square rooted last time, right? Because when I have a square root, right, two negatives make a positive, but also for quadratics, they always have two answers because they're degree 2. Okay, good. So far, okay? Any questions? Okay, this unit is about solving quadratic. So that's exponent of 2 equations. So how many solutions will every equation have? 2. Like I'm trying to drill that in your brain, right? Important reminder. Plus or minus after a square root. How are we doing, okay? Okay, another reminder is that when I'm solving equations, I don't do PEMDAS, I do SADMEP, right? What is SADMEP? What is SADMEP? Thank you, Masa. Backwards PEMDAS, right? Okay. So we're doing backwards PEMDAS, right? The last two things we always take care of are exponents and parentheses, right? Good? What is the very last thing? Very last thing we take care of. Very last thing we take care of. Not a trick question, just trying to make sure you're awake. Very last thing we take care of when we're solving. Parentheses, because that's at the end of SADMEP, right? Okay, let's look at A. So again, what we're doing today is we're putting together what we did the last couple class periods, okay? So first we're going to talk about how to solve vertex form. So some people think we should add 2 first, but be careful because that minus 2 is in the parentheses, right? So that's the very last thing we're going to do, okay? So first, I'm going to square root. Now this is where it's going to get a little tricky because you guys last time were kind of used to being able to just plus or minus at the end, but that's because I had no parentheses. The exponent was the last thing I dealt with, okay? But it's when I square root that I plus or minus. So this x minus 2 equals, hey, what's the square root of 49? 7 and negative 7. It's when I square root that you plus or minus. We doing okay? Now I can take care of the parentheses, right? So I can add 2 on both sides. So x equals 9 and negative 5. When do I plus or minus? When do I plus or minus? When you got rid of the exponent, right? Good. When I square rooted, when I crossed off the the exponent. Okay? We're doing okay? Should we do another one? Now, how about another 10? Let's do, I actually want to do 2a before we do 1b. Okay, let's look at 2a before we do 1b. Am I ready to square root right now if I'm trying to solve? So I'm doing backwards SADMEP. Am I ready to square root? Oh. Subtraction is first, right? So what do I have to do? Good. Add 5 to the other side. So x minus 8 squared equals 4. Then I square root. X minus 8 equals 2 and negative 2. Because the plus or minus happens because of the square root. So x equals 10 and 6. Oops. Plus 8. We're doing okay, you guys? Any questions? Anybody? Huh? You don't think this is what? Okay, so which part made you stuck? Why did we add 5 first? Because what? Good. Okay, then we square rooted, right? Because that's the next thing to do to undo the stuff by the x, right? Does that make sense? What's the square root of 4? Nope. 2 and negative 2, right? But then that didn't get the x alone. That made it so that it was x minus 8. So there's the 2 and, oh, that's an eraser. There's the 2 and the negative 2 from square rooting the 4. Does that make sense? And then that's why I set x minus 8 equal to those. And then to get the x alone, I added the 8. Good? Does that help? Okay, we're going to do a bunch more. But it's better to, once I do a step and you have a hard time, Max, stop me then. It'll make more sense, okay? All right, let's go back and I want to look at B, 1B. Okay? What am I ready to do on 1B? Good. Now careful when you square root this one. What happens when I have the square root of a negative number? I. There's an I in it. Good. So what is the square root of negative 4? 2i and negative 2i, right? Any questions? Max, you good? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So then that is what canceled out the squared, but I still have the parentheses left. Now, careful on this one because is the I is an imaginary number, right? Is this 1 an imaginary number? No. So are those like terms? Imaginary and real numbers? No. So I can't actually combine them when I want to move the x over. So I still need to be working to get the x alone. But this time I can't actually combine them like I did on the others because they're not like terms. Okay, I know that can get tricky. What do you got? What questions do you have?
You can't combine them.
Nope, they're not like terms. Do you guys remember in Unit 2 when we would deal with the i's? Sometimes we'd have complex numbers that had a real part and an imaginary part, right? So we have the same thing here, okay? Sometimes I'd have you, maybe it'll jog your memory, sometimes I'd have you circle the real part and square the imaginary part, right? How are we doing, okay? Any questions? Okay, let's try 2b. What do I do first, the 3 or the 10? The 10, good. Now what? Good. It's too early on a Monday for me to do that. You guys have a calculator? What is it?
It's a decimal.
It is a decimal?
It's 54. It's 54.
1.
Oh, wait. Okay, let's do it.
Oh, okay. Now what? Square root, good. You can use, remember, your times tables or your calculator. That one's not a perfect square, right? So how do I deal with ones that aren't perfect squares? I wish. Factor tree. Tell me something that goes into 54. 2 and? A big number? 27. Okay, 9 and 3. 3 and 3 helps me to cross off the ones that aren't the primes. It's a square root, so how many do I want to group together? 2. So x equals 3. What do I do with the 2 leftovers? You guys remember?
They both have to go inside. So.
Good. They both go inside. And then I just multiply them. 2 times 3 is 6.
Wait, so what do you do with the pairs again?
That's the one that came outside.
Yeah. And then you just added 2 threes.
No, I multiplied the 2 and the 3. Mm-hmm. So that's my answer? Wait, I'm confused. That's only one answer. And I thought quadratics had to have 2. There we go, Molly. Good. After I square root, it's always plus and minus. That's what we learned last class.
Okay, then how come A has...
So I plussed or minused when I square rooted the 4. But that one had another step that this one doesn't because this one had parentheses and then the B didn't. Does that make sense? Good. Okay, how's it going so far?